8, as we said, we have invited to attend this meeting of the LIBE Committee to the Director of the European Asylum Support Office, the so-called EASO, Mr. Robert Visser. We welcome Mr. Robert Visser once again to report on the Annual Activity Report 2012 of the situation of asylum in the European Union. We are going to attend this presentation of this report, followed by an exchange of views with LIBE members. I am only announcing that I won't be able myself to attend the whole point, as I've got some other institutional business to attend, some other appointment. I will be replaced over this discussion by a vice chair. But anyhow, we welcome again Mr. Visser. We'll give him the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Honourable members, warmly welcome that today I can be here to present to you the report on 2012 on the activities of the EASO, as well as the annual state of play of asylum in the European Union. Allow me to give a short overview of the state of play in 2012, but as well, since we are now already far in 2013, to give you some perspective of the first half of 2013. In 2012, there were 330,000 asylum applications in Europe. As I can show here in the next slide, you see a slight increase if you compare it to the previous year, 2011. If you go on in this year, you see a slight increase as well. Slight, not a very big one, but a steady one. The red line, the second line, the lower line, is the new applications. That is important to realize that the total applications, that's the way in which Eurostat makes the statistics, is not the total of people that apply. The difference between the two lines is the repeated subsequent applications. That is a steady line as well, and that is of a certain concern. That means that the total number of applicants, and people think in human beings, is 10% lower in general than the total applications. The applicants in 2012 came mainly from Afghanistan, number one, Syria, quickly rising during that year for reasons that I do not have to explain, and we have regrouped the system of looking at asylum applications. The Western Balkan, if you take the Western Balkan as one region. That is not something that is done very often. We have grouped it for good reasons, we think, to look at the phenomenon of the Western Balkan, because there are many aspects, characteristics that apply for the whole 6 countries of the Western Balkan. That's in total the largest group for many years. It will probably be the largest group this year as well. It is not yet, because we have seen in the first half of this year a remarkable change in influx. Afghanistan is still there, but on the number 3 position. Syria is rising again, and last weeks rising quite considerably. But number 1 in the first half of this year is Russia. There is a recent change in the trend. We are studying it. It's far too early to draw conclusions, but it's a remarkable change in our statistics. The lowest line is the 6 countries of the Western Balkan. You see that Russia even surpasses that. But we know that Western Balkan has a very seasonal influx. And we see already the seasonal effect at this month and last month, rising quickly, and traditionally the Western Balkan is going up till November quite steeply. So without having a crystal ball, but predictions, evidence based on last few years, is that the Western Balkan will rise quickly in the second half. That's one of the reasons that we are undertaking a study and research of comparable nature on the Western Balkan, which we will present later this year, showing the pull and push factors, a comprehensive report on the total of the Western Balkan. Like this, we would like to contribute to possible policy changes and practical changes for the member states. Syria, interesting and highly topical, as I said, is rising quickly. That is about the most difficult place to predict at this moment. But in a certain way, you could speak of a harmonized reaction of the European Union and the member states. That certain way is that protection in one way or the other is given to the nearly 99%, 95, 98%. At the other hand, the sort of protection that is provided differs from member states. That is something that we are looking into, and we are discussing with the member states why there are the different approaches, provided that the overall effect is that the necessary protection is given. We're also investing in situation in Syria. We have set up a COI Syria network of experts to really have a very accurate and day-to-day contact about the situation and probable reactions. And we have set up the preparation for eventual situations when, some would say, if the situation will change dramatically. At this moment, already 16 member states see the influx from Syria in their top 3. So more than half of the member states have Syrians in their top 3 influx. That is an indication how widespread the Syrian situation is. It's not a situation specifically for 2 countries, though there are 2 countries that are that have real high numbers, Germany and Sweden. But if we look further than that, we see that it is a real European and Europe-wide situation to take into account. Going back one moment to last year, we have seen major improvements in member states investing in their asylum systems, anticipating already on the new asylum package. We have seen that the overall protection rate in the first instance rose to 28%. That is because of the situation in some parts of the world that deteriorated, Syria, Eritrea, Mali, Somalia. No, let me, for time's sake, keep it on this, and now change to the activities that we have been performing. First activity, if we look at 2012 and the first semester of 2013, is training and quality. Training is a main instrument for convergence of operational practices. If in the European Union everybody is trained in the same way, in the same material, in the same curriculum, then probably that is a major contribution to convergence and to harmonization of practices. And that is, of course, one of the main aims of EASO. Up till now, we started at the 1st of January 2012, so 1.5 years. We have trained about 2,500 officials. That is an important number, surpassing by far the projects, the pilot projects that have been there for training in the years before. Of those, we have an important number of national trainers. That gives a multiplier effect. You train the national trainers and they train their national caseworkers. That is one of the methodologies to reach the result. And we're working on the quality systems of the member states, first mapping them out and later on assisting them in improving the quality. Second one is what we call practical cooperation. That is expert meetings, bringing experts together. That's an important part of the work, benchmarking, things like that. A vast number where we are rather flexible. We have, for example, been able to, in a short time, organizing workshops and expert meetings on Syria, on the situation in Russia, when early this year that started to rise quickly. And we try to be a flexible and operational instrument in the practical cooperation. Thirdly, the country of origin information. As you know, the most important part of any asylum decision, the information of the situation, the assessment in the country of origin. We have produced 2 major reports on Afghanistan for obvious reasons, and a number of other reports of smaller size but not smaller importance. We have set up, and we are in the course of setting up even more, COI networks, that is connecting the experts of the member states in a specific area on a specific country. And we have operational the COI portal, which is a connection and information point for all the COI units in the EU. Early warning and preparedness system, that is the new Dublin III provision. We have preempted that situation already, and we are in the course of setting up a system of early warning, anticipating, starting beginning of this year, by collecting data. And we have, since a few weeks, on our website, the first public data available, and we will produce that quarterly, giving the trends of asylum and the developments in the asylum area, also in the member states. Then the special support for situations that deserve attention. First of all, since the very beginning, Greece, but also Luxembourg, Sweden, and Italy. Different sort of support, but necessary within the aim and the mission of EASO. External dimension, as I mentioned last year, that was due to budget constraints not the first point on the list, but we have nevertheless been able to invest a limited number of activities, participating, especially with the Commission, on the special attention for Northern Africa, and we are now in contact also and extending it to Jordan. Specific programs, we participate in the unaccompanied minor action plan of the Commission, producing later this year a handbook on age assessment and specific attention for human trafficking. We have set up a cooperation with judges and courts. And finally, the cooperation, of course, with the institutions, with the Parliament, with the Council, with the Commission, but also, very important, to civil society in our consultative forum. The next steps, what are we going to do? The main focus and the main framework of our actions will be the new asylum package. I'm extremely grateful that that has been voted, that has been accepted, and I only underline that it is a very, very big step in the asylum policy of the European Union. Going from minimum standards to harmonized standards is an enormous step, and it will require a lot of energy, a lot of attention to implement it, and the energy of EASO will be devoted to support that process. Law in action, that is actually what we are for. We are not for writing laws, as important as that is, as I can say as a lawyer, but in the end, a law should be a law in action, otherwise it's only paper. You will not be surprised that the main focus will be again on training COI and organizing the practical cooperation. Of course, we will further build on the Dublin III, Article 33 provision and setting up and building on the early warning system. Be ready for tailor-made support. We have just signed an agreement with the government of Italy to give large support to Italy in implementing the asylum package and in the meantime assisting them in repairing a number of deficiencies that they have identified. Of course, this is all only possible within the means that we are provided. We're happy for all the support. I'm extremely happy for all the support of the LIBE committee and of Parliament in this. What you ask, excuse me, what you ask from EASO can only be done by people, and that people are ready for you to support. I can underline as a last point that in this work that we do as an agency, the human resources point is the most important point. The continuity of activities like early warning, which is a regular, which is only useful if it's a regular provision that you can have every month new trends, new changes, that requires a minimum of human resources. Once again, thank you very much for all your support, and I'm ready to go and answer any questions that there might be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Visser, and good morning, everybody. I have 4 requests for the floor. First one on the list is Mrs. Wikström.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And thanks to you, Dr. Visser, for being here and for your excellent presentation. It's always good to have you among us to enlighten us up on the latest events that takes place in Europe today. A great concern of the practice in Member States, and something that you also mentioned in the annual report, is the risk of people being returned to countries without non-refoulement guarantees. And I would like to hear you elaborate a bit on this. How big is the risk, and what can we do to avoid it? For example, a better follow-up or monitoring of return operations, and also what happens to people after arrival. The respect for non-refoulement and how we can ensure this principle also being important for the new report on surveillance of the external sea borders, where Mr. Coelho is the rapporteur. How do you see the role of you in the European Asylum Support Office in that context? I am, together with you and many more colleagues in this room, very proud of the Common European Asylum System. I think it's a great achievement, and it will indeed provide better standards and procedure for the asylum applicants. But now we are facing the next challenge, which is the implementation that you have already mentioned of the regulations and the directives in all the member states. I really value the role of EASO in this context, and I am happy about the new early warning mechanism in the Dublin regulation, which will allow you to a close monitoring of all member states. Have you so far had any difficulties in member state getting them to negotiate or to cooperate at least on this matter? The problem, however, is that the system is only accessible for people who have already reached the EU territory and applied for asylum through their physical presence being here. Therefore, I think that we need now to take a next step, maybe a third phase of this system. The ways to reach the EU today are often dangerous, with an increasing number of people dying in the Mediterranean. We know that there are many people out there in great need of protection.
Can you please come to a
conclusion? I'll come to an end quickly. So, how do you foresee a legal way of a certain and secure way to access the European Union, to ask for asylum? And how do you foresee that we should establish asylum as legal migration and therefore create legal routes to the European Union? Since the time is limited, I have to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at the clock, and I would expect everybody to be a little bit more concise. I'm going to give 2 minutes max to every speaker. Next on the list, Mr. van der Kamp. After that, Mrs. Jotova, Mrs. Metsola, Mr. Brons. Anybody else wants to take the floor? No, then I close the list. Mr. van der Kamp.
Voorzitter, dank u zeer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'd like to thank Mr. Visser for coming to our meeting and giving us that clear presentation. I have 3 brief questions. First of all, on Syria. I think it's an impossible exercise, however much we might wish to bring all the Syrian refugees to the EU. So, on that point, are you in touch with Turkey and Jordan to see whether some of the flows of refugees can be pushed in their direction, bearing in mind all the problems that flow from that? But what about Norway and Switzerland? Don't they have an international role too? How are you involved with that? A second question regarding your staffing arrangements. Now, at the same time, you're saying you need experts who are familiar with the state of asylum law in Europe. Those are people you'd want on board for some time. But at the same time, I gather you also want to take on some temporary staff. So I'd like to know how that would link up. Then a question on Russia. You said that during the first half of 2013, we've had the largest number of refugees from Russia. Could I summarise that as being the Putin effect, or is there actually something more to it than that? Thank you.
Mrs. Jotova.
Благодаря ви, госпожо председател.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to congratulate Mr. Visser not only for the wonderful presentation he made to us, but also for the report. I admit I wasn't able to read it all, but I saw some numbers that are worrying enough. They are related to the increasing influx from Syria. And this, of course, poses the question of the capacity for asylum. One of the countries which has a serious threat in this respect is Bulgaria and also Greece. These are all external borders of the European Union. 46% is the increase in Bulgaria. Actually, 46% more than the capacity in Bulgaria for asylum. Unfortunately, the Humanitarian Aid Commissioner did not give a lot of hope that we would be able to support these people effectively, because recently she said that the funds available for humanitarian aid have been drastically decreased, and she actually mentioned €2 million only left for such an aid. And these external borders are also in a geographical area which awaits a heavy winter. The winter will be difficult. So your analysis in this respect, you mentioned that one of your main functions is specialized help for some support for some countries. How do you plan to assist countries such as Bulgaria and Greece regarding refugees from Syria? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jotova. Mrs. Metsola.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Visser, for your very informative presentation. I have gone through the annual report and I am very happy to see that EASO is up and functioning from its base in Malta. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you for our very productive meeting in July, where I was able to see EASO's work firsthand. I do not need to be convinced that EASO needs sufficient resources to function and to fulfil its crucial role as part of the EU asylum system. Now, we are all well aware that Malta is hosting a disproportionate number of beneficiaries of international protection, and intra-EU relocation from Malta remains an important means of solidarity. Although financial and technical assistance, which you mentioned, do help, they cannot address the limitations that are inherent to Malta, such as the country's size and its population density. This is why we cannot simply look at figures in absolute terms, but must be looked at in relation to the realities of the member state concerned. So I was therefore naturally very disappointed to see the figures on page 47 of the annual report that show that out of the 217 beneficiaries of international protection relocated from Malta that were pledged, only 14 were relocated through EUREMA. The rest were relocated on a bilateral basis. I have not yet heard a convincing argument as to why this was unable to be solved. Surely any bureaucratic procedures can be addressed, and surely EASO can help make the case to member states not to impose criteria which are excessively difficult to fulfil. EASO has a very crucial role to play in this regard, and Article 5 of the EASO regulation makes that very clear. EASO is legally empowered to promote relocation activities among member states and must keep applying pressure on member states to step up to the plate and fairly share the responsibilities. The Commission has announced an annual relocation forum among member states to be held later this month, which I know you, Dr. Visser, will address. I hope that you will be able to make the case to member states for increased pledges to relocate beneficiaries of international protection from Malta. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brons.
Yes, people subjected to ill treatment need to be safeguarded. However, when a genuine victim of ill treatment passes by or through safe countries, they become migrants of choice. When people try to enter countries by stealth and then claim asylum only when they're caught, there must be considerable doubt about the honesty of their applications. But of course, when applications are refused, they're not forcibly removed, and even when that is attempted, appeals and court applications can delay the process for as long as 10 years. Allowing people who enter illegally to claim asylum when they're discovered only encourages illegal migration and indeed is a cause of the deaths in the Mediterranean that have been referred to earlier. Dr. Visser specified asylum seekers from Afghanistan and Syria. Perhaps if Western countries had not been waging war in Afghanistan, there would be fewer people trying to leave it. The civil war in Syria has been encouraged by some of its neighbours, including a strange collection of countries, Turkey, Israel, and that paragon of democracy, Saudi Arabia, as well as, of course, Western countries, some of which are trying to get in on the action themselves and enter the war as combatants. If wars are encouraged and sustained, we shouldn't be surprised if people try to leave the countries concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brons. I got last request for the floor by Mrs. Keller, but then we'll close the list and go back to Mr. Visser for the answers. Mrs. Keller, for 2 minutes.
Thanks a lot. I'm very sorry to have missed the introduction due to other committees, so I won't ask anything that you surely have addressed already, but I would like to stress that also for my group, the Greens, EASO is doing a tremendously important work, and it should be one of the fundamental pillars of our asylum policy, which is also valued like this in our budget, where at the moment we are disproportionately focusing on pushing people back, like preventing people from entering, whereas what we actually should do is help the people that are in dire need. And also, I think, obviously, the solidarity among the member states is very important, but that's something that we can't really ask EASO to solve. That's something that we, as the EP, should push for, and that's something that the member states should recognize. But we should not forget that it's also about solidarity with people who had to flee their country of origin because of persecution, war, because of tremendous reasons that are really not easy for us to imagine, and that we should absolutely show solidarity with those people. And that's something that I hope EASO can promote and push for also among the member states and help them to have proper asylum systems, because there is a lot of problems there, and to really allow for a secure protection of those people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Keller. Then I'll come back to Mr. Visser for answering the questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I will answer in the order of the questions this time. Honourable Mrs. Wickström asked about return and what happens to people after return, referring to the possibility of non-refoulement. I think that the essence of the European asylum system is to guarantee, by the quality of the process and the quality of the decision, that situations of return and risk of non-refoulement is not occurring. Virtually realizing how big the world is and how complicated, and that sovereignty is still a major element in it, I think that it is also from a practical side the only real reason and the only real reasonable solution to this question. Non-refoulement should be guaranteed and should be checked and should be thoroughly guaranteed in the process when people are within our system. And only with that guarantee you can ask or forcibly return people to where they come from if the final decision is that there is no risk for non-refoulement. Any surveillance system worldwide is beyond my imagination. As sympathetic as it sounds, it's from a practical side, and I'm here as an operational person, not possible nearly to envisage what that will mean. So let's concentrate on the quality of the processes within the Union. The new asylum system, the package, provides large steps in that direction. And that also brings me to the second part of your question, the cooperation of the member states in the monitoring of the capacity of the member states. I must say I'm extremely happy to tell you that the cooperation is very, very positive. We get all the data we need. Of course, you would always like to have more. It is a process. Certain data are not yet collected by all the member states. You can't ask data that are not there. But also here we have a very positive attitude of the member states. We work closely with the Commission and with Eurostat and with Frontex on getting a package that prevents double work and that is effective for the widest possible follow-up. A third phase of the common European asylum system. Personally, I am convinced that that moment certainly will come. Law is dynamic, not only national but also European, as we know, and practice, certainly in the migration world, reality in the migration world is a changing reality. So adaptation certainly will be necessary. It's not for me to initiate that process. That's for the legislator. But evidence-based input in that process, I'm absolutely willing to provide that when that occurs. Mr. van der Kamp asked on Syria and the possibilities for action in the region, if I may translate it in that way. That is not, at this moment, the primary task of EASO. We are concentrating on the capacity within the European Union. But you're absolutely right, and I know that the Commission and the External Action Service are active in this respect. And we are in close contact with them, also to prevent double work, but mostly to be informed as soon as possible, and we inform them as soon as possible. The associated countries, Switzerland and others, are involved both in our work as EASO and in the work of Commission and External Action Service, so I think that the connection there is good. Permanent staff and temporary staff, we work with both. The formal terminology, by the way, is a little different, but this is the best way to put it. We need a large core of permanent staff. Additionally, we have a limited number of temporary staff, especially seconded national experts, for situations that are temporary or that deserve temporary attention. For example, Russia or the Western Balkan, I was able to recruit a number of real experts on the Western Balkan, on Russia, for a short period of time, 3 quarters, 1 year, and after that they will return to their capitals, and we can disperse the result of their research. So that's how it works. The continuous work by permanent staff and the specific focus partly by our own staff, partly by seconded national staff. Russia and the Putin effect, I don't know if it is a Putin effect. What I do know is the factual side of it. The influx is mainly Chechens or claimed Chechens. We are still looking into the exact figures, so I'm not allowed to give that at this moment, but the vast majority claims to be Chechen and probably is to a large extent Chechen. Syria, what can we do on the capacity of member states? The fundament of our European asylum system is that each member state is responsible for their own system and their own capacity. That is a choice that, among others, you have made. That is not for me to debate. Having said that, the system of EASO is that in specific cases we can provide tailor-made support to improve the capacity. We do that in a number of cases, and certainly for the member states that you mentioned, we have an open line and open ear for them. If there is a real emergency situation, then you can't expect any member state to be prepared for a totally different number, capacity, etc. Then we have a system that EASO can quite quickly provide emergency support, also in providing temporary extra capacity for member states in the different stages of the asylum process. The only thing that we will never be able to do, according to the regulation, is taking the individual decision. That remains the prerogative of the member states. Malta, I know it from very close. Thank you very much for the kind words. Yes, your assessment is correct. EUREMA is providing, has provided, I should say, lower numbers and more actions have been taken bilaterally than by a European project. We have done last year a study on the reasons, the facts and figures behind the whole process, EUREMA 1, EUREMA 2, and taking into account and looking into the several bilateral arrangements. I would not say it's not a success, the total operation, because there were substantial numbers. It can always be more, but there were substantial numbers in total. But we also have drawn the conclusion from our factual findings that there are several improvements possible. Improvements on the side of the receiving member states, also improving improvements on the side of the, so to say, sending member states. The relocation forum that you refer to later this month, I will address, and we will certainly have a productive discussion on what is possible, how the next steps can be taken. Last two questions, Mr. Brons, Mrs. Keller. I think both more as a statement that wars contribute to migration, and certainly illegal migration where we are talking about, is, I think, a fact. But it's not for me to say if it's right or wrong that Western politics stimulate or take a certain part in international wars. And Mrs. Keller, finally, thank you very much for your very stimulating words. It's good to hear how close we are followed. We like to be closely followed, and we go on with supporting not only the member states but also the European institutions and the European Parliament. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Mr. Visser. That concludes this item on